Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kaufman. We have another awesome photographer here with Stephen and I. He is based out of Utah in the Salt Lake Valley. He's been photographing for 3 years. He's also a volunteer in the marketing department, or part of the organization for Utah Mountain Lion Conservation, another organization that I find really doing some really awesome things for mountain lions there in the state of Utah. He is Ben Bluhm. Ben, it's great to have you and to discuss some of your awesome photos. How you doing, my man?
Doing very well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good to always have people like you who photograph, ethically and take the wildlife into consideration every time you go out there and get these beautiful photos. Just tell everybody, Ben, are you a native Utahan? I think that's how it is. Or did you move there? Where did you grow up? What was your background? How did you get into photography? Seeing that you've been doing this for about 3 years, you said. So where did this all come about?
Yeah, so it is Utahan.
Thank you.
or whatever. It's hard to pronounce. And no, I actually grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts. Sleepy suburb town that's like 25 miles outside of Boston.
Nice.
It's called Medway. We're famous for being the town next to where the marathon starts. And I've been out west for 10 years now. A bit kind of bounced around. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in Idaho for a very brief time, and I've been in Utah for 5.5 years. So, yeah, I as soon as I graduated from high school, I came out west, and very quickly fell in love with the mountains, with nature, hikes, and wildlife out here. It's not like any other place in the country that I've ever been to. I feel like I've traveled a decent amount, and the East Coast just wasn't it for me anymore. And I went to school and have since been in a pretty good job in marketing. But from photography, that actually I kind of happened upon it. I've been a lifelong animal lover. But I actually I kind of randomly asked for a camera for Christmas. This was probably 6 or so years ago. And my parents got me a dinky little Canon starter camera. I don't even remember what kind of camera that was, but yeah, I got this like 70 millimeter lens. It couldn't take anything besides landscapes, and I kind of forgot about it for many years. And then I actually was dating somebody that was a wildlife and wildlands conservation major, and she kind of ignited this like photography of wildlife passion in me. I had never been to Yellowstone. I'd never done the Tetons or like Glacier or anything like that. And we went and did a bunch of trips, and I had this tiny, it was just a pea shooter of a camera. And at a certain point I was like, man, we're seeing all these cool things, and I want to capture it. And so it just kind of happened. It fell in my lap, so to say, where if it hadn't been for me trying just on a whim trying to get a camera, and if I hadn't had this important person in my life, I probably wouldn't be in the position where I am today with conservation photography.
When you started, what was your approach to photography? Were you just taking shots whenever stuff presented? Were you going out looking for things? How did you start?
Yeah, so it was basically anything and everything. We had a very brief wolf encounter in the Lamar Valley in the summer of 2020, and it had always been on my bucket list to see a wolf in the wild. They were my favorite animals growing up, and just had always been naturally kind of drawn to them. And I saw one, just this beautiful gray wolf trotting on the side of the road for probably 10 seconds, because I was driving. And by the time we had pulled over, it had ran away behind a hill. But from that point on, like it didn't matter if it was, like I mean, I didn't see wolves for quite a while after that, but elk, moose, coyotes, foxes, bison, whatever it was, I just wanted more. And there wasn't a particular species or like purpose behind it. It was just fun at the very beginning. And I quickly upgraded to beyond my 70 millimeter to get a 300 millimeter, which was slightly better. But at that point, it was still just like I just wanted to soak it all in. I just wanted to learn and be out there in the parks. And it was really, I took anything that I could get.
I mean, because you're talking to two other East Coasters who grew up, over there too. What do you, for you, and you kind of said it, it's just interesting that there's a lot of, I think the more people that we talk to, there's this movement of people who grew up East Coast. They go through school, they do whatever it is, and then they're headed west. Was that always something in the back of your mind, being someone who enjoyed nature? You said you love wolves from a young age. Is that just one of those things that once I'm done, I'm out and I'm going to go to the wild places?
Yeah, great question. I mean, as it happens, I left home 10 days after I graduated high school. And there were many reasons for that, but yeah, we have some family in southern Utah. Have been blessed to do some more like kind of outdoorsy nature trips as I was growing up. But yeah, Massachusetts, like it never felt to me like that was the place where I was supposed to be, or that I could grow and become the person that I wanted to become out there. I think, especially I lived in Colorado for 2 years, very like right after I graduated. And that was a great kind of transformative time for me. It was, 19 years old, or just turned 19. And every time I went back home, every time I went, for a holiday or something, or to see my family, I just felt more and more removed from the hustle and bustle, the grind culture of the East Coast. And the coffee fueled rampages of traffic and all that stuff. And so it just felt, I just naturally grew apart from it. It felt more distant. It felt not like home anymore. Now I can confidently say that Massachusetts is where I grew up, but it's no longer home to me. And that is because of the passions and the things that I have in my daily life, that bring me so much joy, that has become home to me now, as opposed to associating home with where I grew up.
Totally. Really.
Yeah, I can feel that. What I also love about you, especially in your Instagram profile, is all photos taken ethically. Was that something when you started that it was a principle that you knew right off the bat, this is how I want to approach photography? I'm sure you were seeing things in the park. Maybe was there a specific instance, or was it just who you are as an individual, Ben, that you wanted to make sure when I take these photos and share this stuff with the community, for them to know I'm not impeding upon any species that I'm taking photographs of?
Yeah, no, that's another really good question. And I think for me, it's a little bit of both, where there was a moment for me, and there was also kind of an innate desire to make sure that we, or myself, or like anyone I went shooting with, that we would give animals space. But in the fall of 2020, I actually had a chance to shadow Rick McIntyre for a day, and just be with him and be with a bunch of wolf watchers. It was freezing, but I learned a lot from being with him for a day. And in fact, he actually went to UMass Amherst back home in Massachusetts. So we got to connect on some things. But yeah, he taught by example, and he also taught just like very like he's not extremely talkative. I've had the chance to see him several times. But what he taught me on that day, as we were freezing on a late October morning, was that animals can be wild as long as they're given the space to do so. And his approach with, like I'm not necessarily like a spotting scope kind of guy, but I was like, how many times have you seen, wolves up close? Because I wanted, to see one like right in front of me. Like I was just chomping at the bit for those like rare photography encounters. And, he's like, yeah, I mean, I've seen them, driving in and whatever, but I don't like to view them as much from like close up, because I want them to not even know that I'm there. I don't want them to be like, conditioned to people and whatnot. And so that was a really great kind of educational, like learning experience for me. And then some other people that helped me, that kind of mentored me and brought me up in photography, were able to also kind of instill the respect and the distance, and just being able to follow like the part guidelines are super critical. And when you do have those experiences where you are really close to a bear or a wolf or something like that, like it is so important to know how to react in that moment. And in order to photograph ethically, you really need to have experience, and you really need to know what that means. And sometimes if people don't tell you what that means and explain it to you, you're not going to know. And so I'm really grateful to say that I really, had some great people teach me really what I think is the right way to do it.
And of course, we've talked to, all the great photographers we have had on have mentioned ethics. It's clearly a theme, but the fact that and we're not like in the wildlife photography community enough to know the other side.
Yeah.
So the fact that everyone, at least that we're talking to, is mentioning ethics implies that maybe the other thing runs rampant to some degree, or is it a big problem? I mean, like, how do these things manifest? Like, what have you seen in the field? Like, what are we talking about?
For sure. Yeah, no, yeah. So there are definitely like guiding companies, tour companies and whatnot. And professional photographers that I think myself and several other people that you've had on the podcast would call that unethical. Some of these people would be unethical because they do a few different things. You can have people that just use calls to like unnaturally move the animals into a place that they wouldn't be. A huge problem is baiting, and that is not great. And then there's also, like you got the Torons of Yellowstone Instagram account that's people just violate. Yeah, it's an amazing account. You have people that just really cross the line, and they're not baiting or using like calls or anything, but just a very quick anecdote on that. Like I was exploring the opportunity of going to Canada this past February and doing like a lynx photography tour, or like a tour that featured lynx in it, and also potentially wolves up in like kind of halfway up British Columbia, and it looked super great. It was decently affordable. I won't name the person who's in charge of this company, but one of I went to the Google reviews, and one of them was talking about how the only way that they found the animals was by laying out food out in the middle of the wilderness and staying in a blind behind the food and waiting for lynx or whatever wild animal to come up and start eating it, so that the photographers could be at a close range and get pictures. And so that's something that I am wholeheartedly against, and that's not something that I will ever do. And there are companies like that, there are photographers like that use methods that are completely unnatural in order to get the shot that they really want. And it's really just what I would call that manipulative and extremely unethical.
And that's baiting is a legal practice in photography. I'm sure for things like hunting, it depends, but
sure. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if it's legal or not. I just know that it's something that I'm completely uninterested in doing.
Yeah, because it's pretty strange to,
isn't it?
I mean, I wonder where we can find out about that actually, because that's interesting. I mean, just baiting animals so you can see them essentially is, I mean, I can't imagine that's on the up and up. But we should check that out though.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing a quick search. Natural food. However, sometimes I look. There's an opinion piece. I'd have to read it, but yeah,
Prohibition on baiting only applies to big game hunting activities. It is illegal to use bait while hunting. Yeah, but using bait to simply view or photograph wildlife is acceptable.
Wow.
So you can't bait to hunt in Utah, but you can for big game at least. But you can bait to just to view them. Like if you just want to see an animal, you can put out bait piles. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean that's like game farming. Like, I mean, you probably know about that, right, Ben? Like, I remember going to the game farm where it's like, they give you some apples and the deer would just fly to the fence line, you know?
Yeah. It's like a petting zoo where they give the kids like little
but in this case you're talking about like bears and bison and stuff. You're like, hey, come on over here and have some salmon I bought from the store.
Wild. Okay, so that it does happen. Because I guess we don't really ask that, right? Because everyone is obviously promoting ethical photography.
Sure.
But I never really asked how big of a problem are these other things.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. I mean, again, it's, and you're right, Stephen. It's like we've encountered, I mean, many, yourself included, Ben, a lot of ethical photographers who that is one of the first things they mention. The first things they say is whoever don't do any of these things, we give them space and all that other stuff. So it's
absolutely,
I mean, I know it's a practice out there, so I'm glad that you guys are part of that.
It does explain some of the crazy photos I've seen.
Oh yeah. Speaking of your photos, Ben, because I want to get to them, because I know we have some time here. I want to talk about, and it's so funny because there was somebody on Instagram, I think last night actually, who said they were at the scene. So I want to talk about the two wolves and the bear photo, because that one like immediately struck me. And I sent these Stephen, I think if you can pull that up so you can see it. And they were like, I was there. It was an amazing thing. So just take everybody through this, because it looks like this was in the winter time, and that looks like a grizz to me. I'm not sure. But just give everybody sort of a backdrop. And those of you that are listening, once again, we always do this. You will see these photos on social media when we post about the episode, so all of you who are listening can follow along to the photos that Ben is talking about. So definitely go through this one, because there's two black wolves, and it looks like a grizz on a carcass size. So just sort of set the scene and like how this one happened, because this is wild.
Yeah, that definitely one of the pillars of my photography career was that morning. I believe it was April 29th or something like that. It was this past April, end of April, and I was at the very beginning of a 3-week photography trip up in Yellowstone, and that was just being in the right place at the right time. I remember that it was crack of dawn. It was probably like 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to get out of bed. I just been getting up super early to photograph wildlife for several days in a row. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a quick sweep through the park, and then just go back and take a nap. And so it was just past like the first rays of light when I was going through the upper half of the northern loop in Yellowstone, and it was just light enough to see some movement, and to my left, in kind of this open field, there was a black wolf trotting and heading to the direction of Blacktail Ponds, which is it's a few miles to the south of Mammoth Hot Springs, and I was absolutely just gobsmacked because that was the last thing that I expected, because there was a grizzly bear that had been on that carcass for that was probably the third day in a row that the grizzly had been there every morning and evening. And it's not super common to have interspecies interactions like that, where you can have wolves or coyotes or whatever trying to challenge a bear for the carcass. And so I sped up, and I'm like, man, I need to see this, because I had a pretty good idea of what was going to go down. And there was actually plenty of people already there, and so there were definitely others that had the same experience that I did. But um, at first, it was just the kind of like a lighter black wolf that had just it came out of nowhere. But I saw it as I was driving, and it just kind of went over and stood in front of this bear, and they were just looking at each other, standoff, and then out of nowhere. This just beautiful gray wolf, not in this picture, but in several of my other ones, just kind of appeared out of the shadows, and started like trotting right up to where this that first black wolf was, and then a young, very young black wolf came from this hill in the background at Blacktail Ponds, and so we had three wolves, and I'm pretty sure they were all male. They were just standing there looking at this grizzly on this kind of gnarly looking, thawed out bison calf carcass, as a yearling bison calf carcass. And every year in this area, you get bison that fall through like thin ice in the fall, and they're frozen for several months, and large grizzlies come back to this area every single year, drag out bison carcasses and chow down for a few days. And so the gray one kind of hung back and let the two black wolves approach the grizzly, because they wanted a piece of that thing too. And it was just remarkable. We were all in this photography line at a pullout that was like kind of elevated above the pond in the valley. And so nobody went down to the kind of the eye level with these animals. We were all like on the road next to our vehicles, and so it was just fortunate that we had them within photography range. And what happened after that, I've posted some videos on my account, but essentially these wolves just started moving into the carcass and started doing a dance with this grizz, and they would lunge in, they'd be kind of play dancing around, and they were just, kind of tails in the air, like wagging, and they wanted that carcass. And though that shot was a moment right before they kind of leapt right at the bear in the carcass, and that bear had to. It was just crazy to see. Like, this bear was like charging them. They were running around each other. The bear was like doing circles trying to keep them away from this carcass. But we had just come off a very harsh winter in Yellowstone, really high snowfall, and so food was definitely hard to come by. And the my favorite thing about that image is the eyes, those yellow eyes of both of those black wolves, just piercing gaze, and that, like, you could see like how determined they were to eventually get to that carcass, which they did. But yeah, that I couldn't really draw up a better kind of Nat Geo photography moment than that. And it's definitely there's a lot more that happened in that encounter, but just we had everyone who was there just had the divine privilege of watching this go down in early morning light, which made it even more perfect for photography. And that encounter lasted almost an hour and a half from start to finish, and it was just sensational in every sense of the word.
And who got to keep the carcass in the end?
Yeah, so Kind of lame, but a truck, like a huge construction truck, came by really loud, spooked the grizzly, and the standoff ended with the wolves being much more composed about loud truck noises, and the bear just took off across the road, and we didn't see it again. And so the wolves got free access to that carcass, which is why the encounter lasted so long. And all three of them ended up being on that thing for another almost hour after the grizz left.
Wow. My first thought when I saw the photo was, how cold does that bear look? I mean, that bear looks frigid cold, and he's just,
Absolutely.
they're just made for that kind of temperature. And then my second thought was, man, this is like a really rotted old carcass.
Oh yeah.
And I started to think, like, I wonder if predators like eating that, or if or they just have to.
That's a great question.
I wish we could find that out.
It's probably it's probably what's available, you know? It's got to be.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. It took a long time for the elk to come back in the park, and so those wolves are probably really happy that they could get even this. So,
man.
Wow.
I think it just shows too, like, it's funny that you say that with the truck going by, how I guess it feels that wolves we don't want to say they're habituated in the park, but they clearly are. Like you said, I like that you used the word composed, because they're probably just used to the traffic more so than probably the bears are.
Sure.
And so they're like, oh, that's just a thing going by that's not going to come down and eat this thing.
Right.
Just wait,
Yeah.
I guess.
But you know what? That kind of happens everywhere, though, doesn't it? I mean, like, obviously there's a different level of habituation in Yellowstone. Probably, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's, in terms of becoming acclimated to car noise, I think like that just happens.
One or two, if it's
now,
something.
There's roads.
One
all
of
over
it's
the
something
place.
too, Stephen, where like that you have animals getting hit by cars, and they come across the road and they're like, oh, this is a free meal. I didn't even have to do anything. They just drag it off the side of the road and they're good to go. I'm sure Kara Cassidy will do a paper on it sooner or later. You know what I mean? Somebody. Ben, I don't think we asked this, like, where, because you talked about because when I messaged you, I think a couple of days ago, you just got back from the Tetons. Where do you typically photograph? Because I know you go to Yellowstone, Tetons. What's your range in terms of photography in landscapes and things like that?
Yeah, so a lot of different places. I think the Tetons and Yellowstone are the ones that I go back to most frequently, because they're about 4.5 hours from where I live, and there's nothing like the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, with having so many different kinds of mammals in a highly concentrated area like the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. But I do photography locally here in Utah. There's a few canyons out. I mean, we have plenty of canyons, but there are a few hot spots for wildlife that I like to go back to. I try to go to Glacier a couple times a year. I didn't make it twice, only went once this year, but that's another incredible area. The Glacier, Waterton Lakes, national parks, those are sensational. When I'm able to, I've done Banff and Jasper. Those are also just world class. Hiking, views, wildlife. I did a 9-day trip to Alaska last year, which was sensational. And I plan on going back to Alaska probably every year from here on out. I took an off year to save up for more Alaska trips in the future. But definitely, I come back to Yellowstone more than any other place because of wolves. Because there's probably not, to my knowledge, a better place to view gray wolves in the wild. I know that there's coastal wolves in British Columbia that people can do tours and see there. But yeah, Yellowstone's probably my number one, and the Tetons are close behind that. And then, yeah, I mean, everything else: Utah, Glacier, Waterton, other parts of Alberta, and then Alaska will be part of my rotation in the coming years. But I'm all over the place. I go to a lot of places. There's a lot of places that I haven't been yet that I really want to go to, but I got my hands full with those locations. thus far.
What's the one place, bucket list wise, off the top of your head, where you would want to go?
Ooh, that is a tie for me right now between Patagonia to do a kind of that Puma photo tour and Torres del Paine National Park, and then Churchill, Canada to photograph polar bears before they're extinct. I go back and forth in my head all the time if I want polar bears or the pumas more, but those are both really far away and really expensive, which is why I haven't gotten out there yet.
Yeah, it's all about getting the funds together to do that stuff. But yeah, you're talking about two species that are always on the teetering brink of endangered or threatened and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
totally.
Actually, we want to. Steve and I want to try and get up to Churchill also and do the wolf polar bear thing. Because I don't know if you follow Jad Davenport or any of their Churchills. Oh,
I do.
The footage they get of the wolf, not only the polar bears but the wolves up there, is just absolutely incredible. And that's definitely one of those things where you're talking about they're right there in your purview. You want to talk about close up. If you're looking for close up wolves, just do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. The one, I think, getting back to yours now. Okay. So I had a question with the one. So I'm going to the one, Stephen, for you too, so you know where I'm at. The two, you have a gray and a black collared wolf on a carcass. Is this the same carcass that the bear was on, or is this a different situation?
Same carcass.
So this is the
same one.
So this is after the bear bolted, and this was the
Correct.
gray you were talking about that came out. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're diving right into that thing. And again, everybody who's listening, we'll put these in order so you guys know what I'm talking about. So it's so funny because this carcass didn't look like this in the other photo that you had. I didn't even know there was this much of this carcass left because I looked at it, I'm like, oh, there's nothing there. And then they pulled this thing out of the lake, I guess. That's crazy. That is wild. Oh, my God. And that gray wolf is stunning.
It's my favorite wolf in the park. We've gotten the chance to see him several times now, which is I'm just beyond blessed because he doesn't get much more aesthetic than that.
Is the gray collared, or is it just a gray, or what? Where's the gray associated pack wise with, if you know?
Yeah, so uncollared, member the Rescue Creek pack. Okay. I don't know if that's the alpha male or not, but definitely one of the largest wolves that I've ever seen, and probably one of the most important Rescue Creek pack wolves that are in that pack.
Man, yeah, he's a stunner. He's just checking out the scene.
Yeah.
And then you got you got a couple more here. I know you have, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm on the collared wolf now, Stephen. It's I believe this is 1228F. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So where was this taken? Because it looks like this. It looks like this is more springtime, but I could be wrong. Just give everybody sort of a backdrop on this one, on 1228F and where you captured this shot.
Yeah, so I've also had the privilege of seeing her several times now. She is so the Shrimp Lake pack is a newly formed pack that is taking up the space that the Lamar Canyon pack used to inhabit, kind of more on the northeast side of Yellowstone, approaching towards like Cook City. They're very small now. She just had. Unfortunately, that they formed last year, and the alpha male that she had mated with, since she's a former Junction Butte member, the male that she had mated with was hunted outside of the park boundaries during hunting season this past year, and now she has a new alpha to be her mating pair, and they just had their first litter of puppies. This past spring, and so in a lot of these images that I have, there's some that I haven't yet posted. There's been some experiences that I've had that didn't get great shots, but you could see that she was very much nursing, had just swollen teats and whatnot. But that was taken over Memorial Day weekend of this year, so the kind of almost basically a month after that. After the two black wolves and the grizzly with some snow on it, but That was also a really special experience. I had, I had mentioned previously I did a 3-week trip to be in Yellowstone, and then I came back, 10 days later to spend Memorial Day up there, and Memorial Day weekend up there. And I was on my way out. I just did a quick sweep through the northern loop of the park, and it was a little bit too quiet, I guess, and I hadn't really seen anything. And I'd seen that same wolf, 1228F, a few times before. She'd crossed the road, and a few other interactions with her farther away. But that morning was just crazy, and she was close to the Soda Butte Cone area in Yellowstone, and she was definitely like she was on a mission. She was moving a lot, moving really fast. And she had crossed the road before I'd gotten to that area. She was up kind of on a ridge line, and I'd actually ran into a photography friend of mine, Larry Taylor, and we both were kind of like, yeah, I think we know where we're gonna go, where she's gonna go, and we went further down the road to anticipate her movement. And lo and behold, after about 10 minutes, she was coming down this hill right to the road, and so we got safe distance away, and we're just kind of guessing where she was going to cross. And she ended up crossing not once, not twice, but 3 times within the span of about 20 minutes, which is extremely rare. She is the only wolf in that pack that is even remotely close to being tolerant of people's presence. Her offspring from the year before, and then her alpha male partner, not so much. Very skittish, but she was moving and grooving. She went up and approached a herd of bison. They moved. She crossed back over the road, and at that point there was a huge wolf jam, and Larry and I went beyond the traffic, and went to where we thought she was going to end up. And so yeah, we got just spent tons of time with her. That specific shot was right before she ended up crossing the road, and that was a very special moment for me, because she and I made some pretty good eye contact there through the camera. It not only is it hard to photograph wolves within a relative photography distance, but it's also extremely difficult to get them to look at you, which almost never happens. And so that shot is a very special one for me. And I don't know if and when I'll ever have something like that again, where it's just, hey, she's moving. She was trotting and just looked right at me, and kept moving. But even still, like after that encounter, like she ended up moving closer and closer to kind of the edge of her territory, and actually had a crazy interaction with a coyote, a very famous coyote out of Yellowstone, called Tripod. It's got a lame hind leg, and they had a brush up, and coyote was chasing her out of his territory because he was denning with pups. And it was a crazy morning, and definitely one that I'll never forget for a long time. It's not only were we lucky enough to have her cross the road 3 times, but then we got to see her for probably another 30 minutes getting chased by a coyote, and kind of going at this really bold, lame coyote. So it just action-packed morning. There's nothing quite like Yellowstone in the spring, and just like that first encounter that I was talking about, like just beyond blessed to have just such an intimate, unique moment with a wild wolf.
Let's say you're a new photographer, and you really want to have a good chance of photographing wolves. How do you set yourself up to have the best chance of going out into the park and actually seeing wolves?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and one that took me a very long time, or at least to me, a very long time to figure out. And by the way, I have another probably 15 to 20
Cool.
minutes beyond the hour if we
Sure.
need. So yeah, so if I were a new photographer trying to photograph wolves, I would there's a few tips. Number one thing is it's more than likely a numbers game. The amount of mornings and the amount of time that I've put in to Yellowstone, going into the places where they are most likely to be found, and coming up empty is significantly greater than the time that I've seen wolves. Um, it's if I could sum it up, like you need to be able to commit to getting up before you can even fathom waking up in the morning. You have to be able to be in the right place at the right time and also do it many times. I mean, you can technically see wolves throughout the entirety of Yellowstone and even technically also in the Tetons. I have had the most luck in the northern half of the park, in and around Lamar Valley, even before like before you get there and after you move beyond it. And another thing that's also super important is making connections and getting to know people that, are also in the parks. Pretty frequently, I would say that I'm pretty blessed to know and be friends with several awesome people that are either guides or live in the area or people that are extremely connected with other people. Because a lot of the times that you know that you can really have a breakthrough and have a great encounter is, one, if you're willing to put in the work yourself, but two, if you can learn from other people, and like if they were in the park and you weren't and they saw something like, hey, you know, this is where I saw this thing and this happened at this time. And so just having like making friends with people and having legitimate genuine connections with people that are kind of in the know is a great thing. And then another thing that I started doing the last probably year and a half is, note taking and documentation of all of my encounters, where they were, what happened, and what time of day that was. So that everything is dated. Like all of my wolf encounters, I have, date and time, and a kind of a note summary of like when it happened. Because if you don't want to rely on other people, if you don't want to be a part of a tour group or whatever, like you need to be able to anticipate movement patterns. You need to know where the packs that are more likely to be seen, from a not a spotting scope, are going to be. You need to know their territory. You need to know which members of those packs are less skittish than others, and being able to anticipate, what time of year it is and like where they're going to be based on that time of year, or just kind of having an approximate guess. So there's kind of a science to it. You can never, of course, guarantee or know, but you can put yourself in the best situation to succeed, because animals are creatures of habit. They're confined within their own territories. And just to give a very brief example of what I'm talking about here is like, when I was just in the Tetons this past Labor Day weekend, literally on Monday, 2 days ago, I went at 6:30 in the morning, onto Moose Wilson Road in the Tetons, and the same cinnamon black bear at the exact same time for the third year in a row now was eating berries from the same bush in the exact same place, and I got amazing shots of this bear that had returned to the same area for literally 3 years in a row. 2021, 22, and 23. I've seen the same bear in the same spot at the exact same time in the morning. And so wolves are definitely more like, they move a lot more and they're much more dependent on, you know, the patterns of their prey and like where the elk herds are. But you can really put yourself in a position to succeed if you document and if you put in the work and are able to be, in the right place at the right time. And the only way that you can legitimately do that is if you put in the work and practice, document, get to know people that know more than you do. Because I can guarantee you, there's dozens of people that know a lot more than me, that are in the park every day, live nearby, and can help teach you and help you, even becoming a better spotter. Like it's hard to find them. You can't see, like they blend in so well. Like the only way you can get a more trained eye is by giving yourself opportunities to have a more trained eye. And so that's one where wolves, everybody wants to see them. People ask me very frequently, like, how, like, oh, like I want to see a wolf. How can I do that? And if you're just going to the park for a weekend, you got to be dang lucky. But if you want to actually photograph one and find where they are, it takes a lot of preparation in order to do so.
Yeah, time, determination, sacred timing. I think is it's amazing the amount of photographers that we've spoken to where you all seem to just attract whatever you're looking for. I know it's a lot of work and but I mean, it's just amazing the amount of photographers we've spoken to that like, yeah, no, it happened this day where I was driving, like you said, you were driving up and you have these encounters that I think people would absolutely love to enjoy, just like you were there. Just on that, I want to touch on the conservation aspect for a little bit. What are some of the things that you try to, if you take this route? I know you work for Utah Mountain Lion Conservation, but in terms of wolves or anything else, do you openly, get into discussions with individuals about conservation, about ethic photography? Is that something that you've added sort of to your repertoire as a photographer when you're out and about and you see these things, or you talking about legislation, things like that, as it goes to a lot of the wildlife in Montana?
Yeah, I this wildlife photography, conservation, all that stuff has basically become my personality, and so I can't help but bring it up to everyone and anyone that I talk to and interact with. So, from like the perspective of my work and the the images that I post on Instagram and whatnot, and Facebook, it's beyond a hobby, and it's become a lifestyle for me. Where like I'm not kidding, like almost every waking moment of every day, I think about being back there, being in the parks, finding wolves, bears, all that stuff. But really, what I try to do is um, I try to provide these like nonprofit groups that have just incredible missions. Wolves of the Rockies, Realist Wolves Campaign, even some more like smaller ones like Western Wildlife Conservancy is another one that they don't have a way to do visual storytelling. They don't have the resources to do so, and so I try to tag and just like kind of volunteer my images, to anyone and everyone that could use them to promote wolf conservation or conservation of any species, honestly. And so I think in my day to day life, here in Utah, we have I have had discussions with people about reintroducing wolves in Utah. I have some friends in the DWR and whatnot that it's challenging, but I try to be a person that if you were to learn that I am someone that wants to conserve and protect species, that you wouldn't really be surprised that that's the person that I am. And so I do have a lot of conversations. Um, I do try to promote like and distill like all of these myths about wolves. One of them that is frequently brought up is like, man, like wolves are like, if we have wolves in Montana or Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, whatever the state is, like, what are the ranchers going to do? And that's a huge can of worms topic that really you can't go into that with any kind of extreme viewpoint, because the only way that we're going to make progress is meeting in the middle, compromise and whatnot. But the purpose of my work is really to build awareness, help other organizations and people to promote their mission, and then I really make a conscious effort to talk to people and have that dialogue of just understanding what people think about wolves. Mountain lions is a huge issue right now in Utah in particular, and so I try to wear it on my sleeve, but I try not to be overbearing about it.
Yeah, I love what you said about visual storytelling too. I think that's something that when people see that, and we've had a lot of episodes where the storytelling aspect really bridges those gaps of anyone who might be opposed or against or whatever it may be in terms of the particular species that it is when you understand what the animal is trying to do, essentially just live and thrive and feed its family and all that. It really brings it to a very simplified level that I think most of us can get behind and understand that that's really what these animals are trying to do well before we came into the picture and did all the stuff that we're doing. Is there a specific place, Ben, where people can, I know Instagram's big, but please give your Instagram handle. Like, are there other places where people can see your photos? And then any of the organizations, promote Utah mountain lion conservation, any other wolf things that you want to too, so people know where to go.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is @BenBWildlife. That's probably my primary platform. I have a Facebook page that's the same handle, BenBWildlife. You type in Ben Bluhm photography, you'll be able to find it as well. I am making a website. I've procrastinated it for far too long, but that is literally in progress. I will have a website very soon. And then just, like Utah Mountain Lion Conservation. It's a total volunteer organization. And it's very similar to the missions of other things like Relist Wolves campaign, where we were trying to raise awareness, and we're trying to educate and promote tolerance through visual storytelling, through very composed dialogue. We're not going to get into a political argument about lions or anything like that. But we're really trying to help distill myths about these large predators. That's really what a lot of these organizations, or a lot of people that have ill will towards lions, wolves, bears, it's just they just don't understand really what the truth is and what they do and why they do it. And I love the Utah Mountain Lion Conservation. Like, we have some great people that do a lot of great work, and it's a lot of work. And so if anyone is interested, we'd love to have you guys support and be on board to help us try to conserve our mountain lions here in Utah.
Yeah, I know there's such a huge plight. I think Aaron Bott was talking about that, right, Stephen, about mountain lions in there in Utah a little bit. But yeah, just appreciate everything you do, Ben, and your photography's incredible. Guys, definitely follow his handle.
Thank you.
Can't wait for the website to get up there. And of course, the last question for me, Ben, is when you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
Oh, I just got chills when you asked me that, man. That's such a good question. I would probably say there's so many thoughts, but I would probably say wild beauty. There's so many like just specific words that you can say about it, but captivating, life-changing. There's a lot of words to describe them, but for me, on a very kind of deep personal level, it is just this it's a call to the wild. Like, I know that's a book and everything, but when you look in the eyes of a wild wolf, it is, I can't describe what that feeling is, other than it is transformative, and it really helps you like unlock the windows of your own soul and be able to see into nature. But you can tell that those things, they're highly intelligent. They are family pack animals, and they always have a purpose with what they do. And I'd probably call it purpose. The first thing I think of on a kind of a deeper level is every single time I've seen a wolf in the wild, and every time I've been able to capture a picture or even just observe them, it is the behavior that they're doing and what they're exhibiting is always with a very, very clear purpose. And a lot of the time it's because that is, they're doing something for their family, and they're doing something to survive, and they're doing something that is within even a bigger picture to preserve the balance of nature, and to enforce kind of the purpose of their existence as apex predators, to keep the ecosystem intact.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Ben Bluhm, thank you, my man, for everything you do. Thank you for helping mountain lions in Utah. Thank you for taking these awesome photos of everything wild. Follow him on Instagram. When we post all this stuff, you guys will see these awesome photos. Ben, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. This is a great opportunity, and I really am just grateful for the time that you guys took as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. How's to you all out there, and we'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.